Good afternoon and welcome to the Week 7 edition of Underdog Live Drafting. We'll be popping up some battle royales, talking some more strategy, answering some questions from chat. How is everyone doing? It's been going well on my side. You can see I feel like I'm always in a new place with doing these cameras. We just moved into a rental. We're doing construction on the house, so hopefully we'll eventually have a quality Levitan grade bookshelf and everything behind me at some point. But for now, we're just getting a window and a wall. But how's everyone doing today? Hopefully, we got a lot of positive feedback about the show last week, talking through kind of the more macro level strategy elements of it, giving a peek at the rankings and such. For anyone that is interested, today we're going to be popping through some drafts, probably do a few of these. This is just the most fun way is just to do these drafts while also I can talk through strategy elements for this, get some people, from the chat, from, watching live to join in those as well, answering any questions you do have. And really, we're just going to continue to kind of, play with the structure of this show for whatever is most valuable to you all. Definitely don't want to spend nearly as much time as I did last time with the macro level strategy aspects, talking to the process. I think that kind of evergreen content can stay there, can always reference it. But as we go through this week and kind of just talk through where there might be some opportunities that we can leverage, where we see maybe the field might be ahead of, lower than the ETR ranks, and where we can lean into kind of some uncertainty to gain some edge, gain some leverage on our opponents. So with that, I think we'll just jump right in. Let's have some fun. And let's go. I see some chat popping in, so I'll start answering some questions that I go through as well. But start things off. Let's get a draft going. Okay, so same thing as normal, starting off with really just uploading the Battle Royale rankings that ETR puts out. So that'll be the baseline that you see for these drafts. From there, I think I did a couple last night. All right, so I did a couple last night. I see Mr. M with this question, which I think is highly relevant, is when is the most plus EV time to draft? Is it Sunday AM? I think without a doubt. I think for these specific contests, it's not like the Underdog, it's not like the best ball for us the season, where if you're drafting in May, June, you're going to be able to create teams that are just so unique compared to the rest of the field. Across these days, you're just not going to gain that level of value from drafting early on from a uniqueness standpoint, because maybe right as it opens, ADP hasn't truly caught up. But the thing is, I think that's such an outlier. So maybe I'll say hey, if you want to jump in immediately because you think okay, maybe early on I didn't see, but maybe you could have got Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, and you're not able to get those two together pretty much the rest of the week, as we see. Just because, hey, look at their ADP right now, 2.7 and 2.0. So maybe if you jump at the very beginning, there's some small kind of uniqueness aspect, but the real value comes in the knowledge across the week of, hey, what's been going on with these drafts? Because as I mentioned, hey, my number one priority in this is how do I give up a little bit of projections in exchange for getting a ton of uniqueness? And one example is right now, if you look at DeAndre Swift. So let's see if we see what is Swift's right now ADP is 35.4. So if for 35.4, I've got a little chart. I think that means he's being drafted in around 15% of drafts. And in general, I would love that. I want all the DeAndre Swift. But the challenge is what if he gets a full practice in today and then another full practice in on Friday? And you look at how many drafts have already been done in the Battle Royale, and it's probably only 5-10%. So that 35.4 might mean only 15% of drafts so far are taking him. But come when the majority of drafts happen on Saturday, on Sunday, he's going to be 80-90% drafted if he's getting those full healthy practices. He moves up in the projections and all of that. Okay, we are on the board here. We have option. Do we want to go with kind of the Jamar? Do we want to go with Lamar? Let's go with Lamar. You're never really with this format going to be getting a Lamar Mark Andrews. So that's not a reason for me not to take him here. I'm going to see if I can turn this off. It looks like I'll turn it off later. The exposures are still the best ball from before the season. So I'll take some time and maybe after this can turn those off or go back. But yeah, so I'm not worried about not drafting a Lamar because I can't get Mark Andrews, so I'll go with that. If I take Jamar Chase, which the rankings say I should do above Lamar here, that just means that I'm probably never going to get Lamar. And so across a more well-balanced portfolio for this week, I do really want to focus on getting, in number one. If you do look at Lamar's stats the last 3 weeks, though, they haven't been phenomenal. And a lot of that just comes down to lack of passing touchdowns. Each of the last 3 games, only 1 passing touchdown, only 1 touchdown in general. And that's really capped his upside. Haven't seen too much about this hip issue. We'll look into it. But without a doubt, he still has the number 1 upside here. There you go. We're early enough in the draft that I'm still just going to be going for upside plays. If you take a look at the ETR ranks that we've put out for this, apparently my team is going to be all dealing with hip issues. Okay, that's fun. If you take a look at the ETR ranks for this week, we're kind of lower on the running backs. There really isn't that much of a gap. And when Josh Jacobs is your number 1 projected running back on this slate, and look, he's had 2 huge weeks the past 2 weeks, but when that's your number 1, and then we go back from a deepness wise, we're still seeing Kenneth Walker getting pretty late with a great matchup against that horrible run D of the Chargers. I mentioned this Swift, Aaron Jones, I think the actual difference in projected points from the top to the last ones being drafted is only around 4 points, where if you compare that to the tight end spaces, you're seeing 6, 7, 8 point differences. I think QB, it's around 4. I think wide receiver, we're seeing around 5. And so that's where I really look at it as just a value above replacement kind of thing. Let's see if I'm sure the strap will make it a little better. And so that's where, from a value above replacement kind of thing, I'm looking at, hey, where should I really be investing my capital in those first 2 rounds? Where do I see kind of the most, projected gains against the field there? Alan Brock, I've gotten 2 Lamar Andrews so far. Well, I'm curious then, Alan, when you got those, was it just kind of luck that fell? Was it earlier on in the drafts? Definitely curious to know, because that's a fantastic stack. And maybe that is a bit of an argument for drafting early but again, it'd have to be full barbell approach of drafting very, very early before these ADPs. Because what I've seen is, other than injury news, the ADPs don't really shift that much throughout the week. But if you would jump in at the very beginning, I could see some arguments for that having some decent leverage. All right, good to see some familiar faces in here. A lot of you probably know Eagles. He joined the stream during the Best Ball Summer earlier this year as well, and then a couple other familiar names there. All right, at this point, we should probably be thinking about what we want to do with this team. From a positional standpoint, let's start looking at just for the, I think Bateman was questionable last I saw. If there's any news there, return to practice. So we're probably going to want to grab him, especially with that 35.8. He's another one of those guys who I think that ADP will be dropping as the health comes out. Duvernay is 35.9, but with Bateman playing, you don't expect for him to really be a must draft. I do think George Kittle is kind of a tier above the rest of the tight ends. And when I look to see hey, are there later tight ends that have that upside, but are also unique? There's a couple, but it's not that appetizing this week. And I think that's because of the buys and the smaller slate. So I'm going to be happy grabbing George Kittle here. I think he just has the level of upside. It just has the level of upside that we're still looking for to be able to match those top 2 ADP picks of Kelsey and Andrews. And I think I've mentioned this in the previous stream, but I'm more willing to go off the board and grab that unique tight end who's not being drafted, like here, Hayden Hurst, when I believe that a 6 for 60 in a touchdown game, or what did Hayden have 2 weeks ago? He had 653 in a touchdown for 14.3. When I feel like that can be the number 1 tight ends score. The challenge is when you have both Kelsey, both Andrews on the main slate here, it's extremely hard to really be matching those. And so Kittle is one of the few who actually has the ability to far surpass theirs. All right, we're at a point in the draft where I'm no longer caring about ADP. I've got our tight end. We've got our QB. I'm going to go with the stack here and just grab Bateman now. And part of it is I want to get my guy. Part of it is I don't care about ADP. It also allows me now to kind of have a little more time to think through how I want to build out the rest of the lineup. We know we need a running back, and then we need one other flex spot. So I'm going to start off taking a look at the running backs here. I started marking a few of my guys when I was doing some drafts last night. JT, without a doubt, is one of them. His right now was limited in practice Wednesday. I think from a game theory aspect, our ideal situation for battle royales would be he gets in limited practices all week. That keeps his ADP down, so people aren't really feeling confident. Game time decision, and then he plays, and then he ends up playing this week, and you get that. But if he ends up not playing, that's fine too, because you're getting that value in that late swap that we talked about last week. And one of my favorite things is getting that Sunday morning late swap. Last week, I mean, you look at what one of my options from the late stack was the Indianapolis Colts running back. When Nyheim Hines was out, when JT was out, Jackson ended up having Deion Jackson ended up having an absolutely amazing day. And his ownership, his ADP was 36. I think that probably means his ADP was he was being drafted in less than about 2% of leagues. And he ended up, if not the number one, very close to the number one running back on this slate for last week. And that's something that early on in the week, you weren't drafting him because you didn't know about that. And so either you have to decide, I'm just never going to draft early in the week, or I build in enough questionable guys so that Sunday, when that news comes out, I can sub in someone like him. I'm just curious what he is right now. So like he's not being drafted now because if you draft him now and JT plays, you don't get to swap him out and he turns into a dud. So you really can't take that risk profile. So instead you draft JT now because if JT plays, you get arguably a top 3 RB on the slate. If he doesn't, okay, now we can figure out, do we swap to that Deion Jackson who's not being drafted at all? Well, JT got drafted, not a surprise with these streams. Obviously, that's higher than we've seen from ADP. It might be a basis of the stream. It may just be he was looking at him. But almost exact same scenario as DeAndre Swift. Yes, questionable right now. Looks like he's expected to practice. May jump up in those rankings throughout the week if he gets some full practices. But I'm still very happy having him on my team, hoping that it is a bit of a lower ADP, lower ownership situation throughout. And he has slate breaking upside. For the flex spot this week, I think running back's a little stronger than wide receiver, but we'll take a look from a stack angle wise. We've got our Baltimore versus Cleveland. Amari Cooper is the first name that jumps out at me for our last one because his not being drafted that often. Oh, he literally just went right there. But Cooper would have been a good stack one. Maybe I should have snuck him before that, but 32.7. I've got 32.7, meaning he's being drafted in around 55%, a little more than half of leagues. All right, we're running out of time here. If I was going to go running back, Aaron Jones is definitely a low own. His ADP is not going to creep up. We'll star him for now. From a correlation standpoint, we could go with like a Drake London. Low ADP goes against the chase, but like they're just not passing at all. I think I'm happy with just going with the running back here. Other options could have been one of the Kansas City pass catchers. Juju was still available. We saw what he did last week. Yes, it was a bit of a broken play that got him that touchdown, but if you think that San Francisco-Kansas City game can be a shootout, I don't hate it. You know that Mahomes is being drafted a decent amount, so it's not like you're getting uniqueness with him. If Mahomes has a huge day, maybe that was the QB you needed. Other option could have been Gallup. I know Gallup's at like a 35.7, so I've got that. He's being drafted in less than 10% of leagues. So that could have been an interesting mini stack with the DeAndre Swift. As you saw, the cover boy for this week was Dak Prescott. Dak is back. It is fantastic to, hopefully he's going to be healthy and slinging it. But I think that's going to elevate the entire offense. They've really been playing a bit kind of scared, not scared, but just, smart with Cooper Rush, protecting the ball, not letting him lose the game, playing as that game manager. And I think Gallup, he's looked healthy. He's getting his full complement of snaps. Plug him in with Dak, and that can be a sneaky option there too. Okay, first draft done. We'll hop in a couple more. Chat, if you do have any questions, feel free, throw them in here. Otherwise, I'm just we'll pump through another, let's do maybe 2 more of these. Okay. I like as well, hopefully we'll get some different spots that we can mix in. So we can have different types, different structures where we're drafting from and so forth. Okay, so sitting at the 4 spot again here, or not again, but 4 spot here. And kind of what we were talking about earlier with how I want to use my first round picks for this week. You could see with ADP, like it's really spread out this week. You've got 2 guys here. There's no consensus on who's the 1 overall. After that, the next highest is like at 5.5 at Lamar. Or actually, you have 2 running backs here as well. Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, both at around 5. So you got 3 guys with an ADP of around 5. You can tell it's really being mixed up. It's a little interesting for this. So like, if I'm going by ETR rankings, I am never going to be taking Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler. I think that's where you've got to make a decision like, hey, are you comfortable just completely fading one of the kind of higher end running backs because of the structure? Or do you, build some lineups with them just so you get some exposure to them? I think me personally, I'm saying like, hey, I'm accepting that I'm going to be fading those running backs this week. And from there, just think about ways that maybe, hey, if you're already fading them, maybe there's ways you can get leverage off of them. Maybe, I think Robert Woods is a very late pick with no Treylon Burks going against Indy. Maybe like that's someone that you want to go grab a couple of. He's literally not being drafted there. Or with Austin Eckler, obviously, like you can go with Big Mike. You can go Keenan Allen, looks like he's going to be healthy, maybe coming in there. So options there, but I think it's helpful to at least, because I was hoping one of the tight ends were going to fall. We're in the same situation as last draft. Could go Lamar again, but just for stream's sake, let's mix it up. We're going to go with, we'll throw in, let's see, Jamar Chase here. Jamar Chase also sets us up a bit with if we wanted to grab a Joe Burrow stack later on. 15.8. Yes, he's being drafted a decent amount. I don't think we would go with him with 9, but at that 16 spot, which I'm sure is a pretty common correlation. It allows us at least to get some, you needed that Joe Burrow last week. We know that he has the passing upside. The question becomes like, how hard do you go after? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of this T. Higgins with the Chase, with the Burrow. Like when I like to do this, I like to not reach for it, even more extreme, like not reaching than traditional best ball, because if I know that like, hey, it's just so natural that people are like, okay, I got Chase. Okay, I'm getting Burrow. Okay, well, I should get Higgins too. That double stack, like, I think is probably pretty common. And so if I'm going to be getting a common lineup, it'd be great as well if I can try to get like a value ADP elsewhere. So if Devontae falls to us here, I'm definitely going to take Devontae and just hope that like I'm still able to build out this stack later on. And maybe it's a bit more unique because I'm also throwing in a Devontae and just Devontae goes. So now we're in that situation here. I think this is an example where I'm going to grab Saquon because of what we talked about. Even though our ADPs don't love him, I'm still getting the increased uniqueness that, hey, Saquon at 6.5, Chase at the 7, grab those 2 as a maybe not that owned couple, but more importantly, if I am able to then grab T and Burrow, it it adds to the uniqueness because I didn't reach to grab these and I grabbed another elite guy with a low ADP at the top. Yeah, agreed. I know. I think this is a data storage issue, Alan. So Alan's talking about like, bummer, you can't look at the previous draft board. I think it's just because there are so many of these drafts being done every week. It would just be massive cost for the Underdog infrastructure to be hosting all of the draft boards and all of the teams. Maybe in the future, this is something they're able to solve. But that's at least my guess. Agreed. It'd be a lot. It'd be a lot better for doing some analysis too. I know that some people literally like screenshot their draft boards right after so they can take a look and kind of maybe run some analysis because there's no data around this game. Any of the simulations that I've built out with regards to ADP and what I think that means for expected ownership is purely speculative based off based off inputs around what I think people are drafting at, if they're, where they're drafting I think I built this out on a previous show with the Badge Bros, but in general, that comes around to having to make assumptions for if they're only getting drafted X% of the time, in what rounds that would be, how often people are reaching, etc. And then same thing with correlation. Like, are people actually correlating? Are people doing bringbacks? Is that something we should be doing because it's valuable? I mean, the ETR team has done some amazing analysis on why that's valuable and like, hey, how often it happens and how often those teams finish the 1% for massive GPPs from a DFS standpoint. But we just don't have the data to do that for battle royales. So interesting. I mean, yeah, interesting if you could. It's kind of just, this is such a nascent, such new space. Yeah, make some assumptions. Okay, so here we are. We've got this Higgins and Burrow thing going. AM Carter has a QB. I'm still just going to go from an ADP, grab Burrow first. Also, even if we don't get Higgins, Burrow and Chase is still a pretty strong stack there. So let's grab that. Christian Kirk has a 35.5. I'm going to throw him in the queue as a mini stack to the Saquon Barkley and a low ownership guy here as a potentially our flex spot if we do get T. Higgins. From a tight end spot, the top three are gone. So now we're really just kind of waiting. If we don't get Higgins, we could always consider the Hayden Hurst aspect there. A couple other things that, hey, we're looking really for the upside. I don't think Darren Waller is going to be playing this week. So if you wanted, you could just grab Waller, expect that he's going to go Q, and then get a sub later on. Possibility. All right, let's grab T. Higgins. So we're getting this double stack here. One thing to keep in mind with these Q scenarios as well is if it is a early or a late game. Because if you're taking a Q player that's playing in the 4 o'clock, 4:15 games, you are not going to get the stack replacement for them from an early game, I do not believe. You are then limited to the replacement from those later games. And, some of the times we only have 2-3 later games. And so who you're drafting, who you're, swapping him with is a very limited field. So keep that in mind as well. I bring that up just because I know like Las Vegas is West Coast. So that may be one of the later games this week. I'm going to give that a quick check on, let's see, schedule. All right, late games this week are, Jets at Denver, Texans at Vegas, Seattle at LAC, and Kansas City at San Francisco. So I would probably not wanting to draft Darren Waller because of the Q aspect, because your pool for tight ends you're going to be limited to is then going to be Conklin, Dulcich, Foster Moreau, maybe Noah Fant, but he got sick. Disley, I guess Gerald Everett's probably the decent one, but even he's got a Q tag. Just something to keep in mind when you are doing these Q tags. Like I'd probably honestly rather go with a Dalton Schultz with the Q, with them playing early, with that coming back, low ADP there. That's probably a consideration. Okay, we're coming up on our 5th pick, taking a look at the team. We have this double stack. We could, this is an interesting one. Like, do we want it? Would it be better to go with Drake London? I usually when I'm choosing between like a mini stack or full game stack, I'll default to the full game stack, especially if we have the 2 pass catchers here. Like we really need this game to be just a complete shootout. Actually, Pitts, Pitts is still there. Okay. We're going to go with Pitts as the bring back instead of Drake. We know we needed a tight end. So that gives us that full game stack. Yeah, we don't love what's going on with that passing game, but we know that Pitts at least has the individual talent to have a major breakout. And if this falls into place here, I'm going to grab Christian Kirk, which we're not expecting anyone else to really trying to be snipe him. He gives us the mini stack against Saquon, and this ends up giving us some great correlation from a uniqueness angle. Hey, Christian Kirk's at 35.5. I believe that means he's being drafted in around between 10 and 15% of the time. So you're getting a little uniqueness there. Kyle Pitts, even himself at 32.6, probably only being drafted in around, 60% of leagues. So good to have. Overall, I like this team. I do have slight concern sometimes around hey, how chalky, will this actually be a duped team? Because yes, the Saquon I think makes it a bit unique, going with Chase, going with Saquon, still going with that full stack aspect. But I feel like once you get that, are people doing the mini correlation? If you grab Saquon, do you go grab Christian Kirk? I don't know. I guess we could have gone ETN, could have gone James Robinson with another running back. That's one of those things where, hey, we just don't have the data to know. So I try to look to, while I'm doing drafts and such and seeing, does it look like people are doing bringbacks? Does it look like people are kind of doing mini stacks? And my intuition is that we are still in a bit of a small bubble. I think the majority of people who are playing Underdog are not the heavy DFS GPP style grinders. Not the ones who are subscribers paying attention to Thursday at noon drafts for ETR. So I think mini game stacks, bringbacks are still a bit of a unique thing. But we'll see. Okay. Let me look back too. So Taylor is asking, how many drafts do you do for week 6 Battle Royale main slate? Week 6, I did not do that many because I'm in the middle of moving and just didn't have that much time. Week 5, I think I did around 100 of them. So in general, for me, it's just hey, how much time do I have for that week? And predominantly, how much time do I have on Friday, Saturday? If I have the time, I want to enter a ton of these. Usually the way that I do the structure, because I'm drafting so many of these late guys, is I'll pay attention to the first 2 or 3 rounds, and then I'll just set my queue, because I'm rarely ever fighting with anyone for my picks after the 3rd round, even sometimes 2nd round. And so because of that, I can just, hey, jump in the draft, do the first 2 rounds, get the draft going, set the queue to get the correlation, to get my low-owned guys, and jump in a new draft. And so that's how I personally am able to do a decent amount of these in a fast time. And I want to, thank you, Crazy Chet, giving us Mark Andrews. We'll get a little uniqueness here. Maybe the Dream will even give us a full Lamar stack. We'll see. But yeah, so I mean, it varies me. I want to get in as many as possible, but also, I understand they take time. And so it's got to fit in with my actual real life schedule. What do we got? So Gus is saying, new to these drafts, can you explain this swap process? Yeah, so I'll do a quick explanation. I went a little more in detail. If you take a look at the last week's show on Friday, I really dove far more into the macro strategy aspect. So definitely recommend taking a look at that. But a high level, so what's going on is with these swaps, the way that their swap process works is if you draft a player that has a questionable next to it, or a probable, or a no injury designation, and they do not play, you are able to then swap that player out. The software actually does this automatically. So it automatically swaps the player out, and it'll replace it with either the highest ranked player from an ADP situation, or your highest ranked player that you have in your ranks, and it'll default to your ranks. So you can't do individual one-to-one swaps, but come Sunday morning, let's say you were drafting DeAndre Swift, he had a questionable tag, he ends up not playing, you're going to have a lot of Swift teams that'll swap. And so you can go and set your ranks and be like, okay, I want that swap option to actually be, let's see, who could be a good one for this one? Okay, Aaron Jones. And so why would you choose Aaron Jones? Well, and so what happens is when the games start, it gets rid of your DeAndre Swift and it goes down your list. And it's like, hey, Aaron Jones wasn't drafted, so it puts him in. If Aaron Jones was drafted, it goes to whoever your next one is and it swaps them in. And so the value here is we can Sunday morning, we can see, and we've known all week, like who's been being drafted and such. We can see who are the unique players with a high upside that can get put in. And a lot of times Sunday morning, because of some sort of an injury issue, let's see, what do we got here? Okay, we did. We have Mark Andrews, so we're not getting Lamar. We're not going to go to Cleveland. So what kind of stack do we want to go? Let's grab Mahomes and see what we can do with a Kansas City, San Francisco stack for this one. Okay, and so Sunday morning comes and we can take advantage of that swap by then swapping in someone that has not been drafted at all throughout the week, a very low-owned play, which gives us uniqueness, which gives us leverage in the field. And maybe it's someone that, the rest of, but still has upside. And so like Deion Jackson was the perfect example for last week where his ADP was 36. He was not being drafted virtually at all throughout the week. But once we heard Hines isn't playing, Jonathan Taylor's not playing, he became a solid play. And so you could swap him in at like probably 1% ownership. And the only reason you're able to do that is because early, like there's no way you would have made that decision to draft him on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. So you take the Q guys early on, accept that, hey, if they play, you've got high upside like a DeAndre Swift. But if they don't play, I don't want George Kittle. Shoot. I forgot we already got Mark Andrews. Okay. When I'm running out of time, I know I can just go with my stack because ADP doesn't matter if there's not something I love at the top. So I'm going to grab Juju here. Let's set up. Jeff Wilson has not been doing much. Atlanta game was bad, but you know what? That low ownership, we need some more correlation aside. We could also consider Ayuk, who had tremendous targets last week, had the 2 touchdowns last week. He still did it on 11 targets. Let's put those in the queue. But so that's the general strategy aspect for the swap is, hey, find guys who are Q, who have high upside that if they play, you're happy to have them in your lineup. But if they end up not playing, you can set your ranks and push in someone who is low owned as a replacement. But yeah, definitely check out the last week's episode. I go more in depth on it and had a more probably clear train of thought rather than in the middle of one of these drafts and trying to figure out my stack. All right. Any other questions though? Definitely pop them in chat. I think we'll probably try to keep these shows to a little shorter, around like that 40-45 minute period. Do around 3 or so drafts, depending on how things kind of lay out. But happy to answer any questions or kind of chat through any strategy elements as well. Okay. So what are we looking at here from a running back? Like it really looks like, I don't think we're going to stack Mahomes with any Kansas City running back. We could have Jeff Wilson as our bring back here. So we'll keep him as a bring back and touching that running back aspect. Other than that, this might be one of those drafts where we're just looking for like, hey, the guys we like that are not being drafted much. You can see from projection wise, like we like Tyler Lockett, Brandon Cooks seems to be an interesting one. And he just hasn't been getting the volume. It's not high value touches either. It doesn't feel like one that we like. But where we are in this draft, I'm going to get a little crazy. They're letting George Kittle fall to us. They probably think that Crazy Chet was going to grab him with this because I wouldn't draft him. But now I'm getting uniqueness. I think Kittle still has tremendous upside. He fits our stack aspect. We're going with the bully tight end aspect here. This is going to be a very unique build. Very, very few people, I think, are going to be going with double tight end in general. And so we get Mark Andrews, George Kittle with the Mahomes for this stack option. We'll get rid of these bringbacks now. And now I think we can can do one of two things. We can, because we're so unique and we've got a unique guy here, I'll probably go with one, just hey, best player available that we really like, just to give us some kind of high upside points. And then another will be a low owned, very low owned guy. All right, let's go with JT. He fits everything we like with regards to the Q, high upside. Throw him in. Now we're looking at one more. I do like this team a lot. Maybe we don't even go that crazily off the board with a unique guy here, especially because, again, it is only Thursday. So if you try to go for someone that you think is crazy unique now, that may change as the week goes on. So that's why, I do like doing a lot of my drafts later in the week, but I think it is helpful to do them early from just a knowledge standpoint, just to get a feel for like, hey, what's happening at these drafts, where are players going? Because come Sunday, when you see an ADP of 32, well, that 32 just means that probably in the last like 24 hours or so, that's where they're being drafted. But earlier in the week, they maybe weren't drafted at all, or maybe they were drafted a ton and now they've fallen the other way. So it's valuable to kind of get those drafts in early on to be able to just keep tabs on where ADP and ownerships are, ebbing and flowing throughout. Alan asked if we're taking any shots on Latavius, Kenyon, Brian Robinson. I think those are probably a little too off the board for me. I think when I was going like for my guys earlier, the back of the tier that I was really looking at, ideally was going to be at that Aaron Jones and Zeke. If it's stack, I don't mind grabbing with like an ETN, a Wilson, one of those. But for, I guess that's what we're saying. Same thing with, as you were saying, like, hey, if you wanted to go with Kenyon, like you're getting leverage off Lamar, you're getting leverage off Mark Andrews. There's definitely argument for it. Okay. Oops. We are to one more person. Let's just go with Chris Godwin. I'm okay with just eating some chalk here because I do think we've got a unique enough lineup with how we have it set up with this double tight end and a couple later guys there. So we're just going to get a one-off with Chris Godwin here to fill out this team. Okay. I think those are good. I feel pretty good about that team. I like that. Overall, appreciate you guys, coming. Hey, got to do a few drafts there. If you do have any questions, feel free to always, reach out on Twitter, put them in the comment section of these YouTube videos, and we try to get to those as well. And going to try to keep making this a weekly thing, coming out on Thursdays, give a little sneak peek into the week, get you set up for the weekend, kind of getting through these drafts. Remember usually on Wednesdays, Wednesdays or Thursday mornings is when we'll be releasing the Battle Royale ranks. So definitely use those. Leone has added the ceiling projections in there as well. I think those are helpful. Just for getting an idea of, hey, who do we think really has that opportunity to really go off? So definitely incorporate that into your process. You can easily import them into Underdog. If you are new to Underdog, you can still download, use promo code ETR. I think we're still getting up to a $100 deposit bonus there. And it helps out the ETR show, keeps all these shows free as well. Thanks everyone for joining us. This was fun, and have a great weekend. And I will see you all next week. Hey, everyone.